My name is Charles Warner. I've been to seminary with the Diocese since COVID, so I entered in 2020, and I'm entering my final year of seminary. So, coming to this last year, what that means is I'll be ordained to the transitional diaconate in 2 months. And then I'll be ordaining a priest back here in Saginaw at the cathedral, probably around next June. So please, thank you for all your prayers, thank you for all your support that you've given me these 5 years of seminary so far, and one last year to go. I know I received all of our fellowship hands off with envelopes and cards from St. Athanasius, Sacred Heart Parish here in here, so it's really touching, it's really humbling just to know all of your prayers and support, because in a way I've never met you, and so we're strangers, and so it's very humbling that people I've never met are just praying with me and supporting me in many ways I can't to myself, and so I thank you all for your prayers. They go for making me, they go for just keeping up with the faith and being involved in the parish and coming to this Dallas for Colors event. 6 years old also, right? Yeah. So that's just a little bit about kind of me. And so now I'll kind of share what events in my life led me to enter seminary, led me to kind of consider the priesthood as what God is calling me to do. So we're here in Harrison. I've actually never been in Harrison. My parents grew up in the south of the diocese, so Maple Grove, New Lothrop, Chesaning area. So that's like the furthest south along here. Harrison, we're like the furthest north. But I was born in Midland, Michigan, and I lived there until age 7. But then my dad, he transferred to Texas for work, and so I lived in the suburbs, south suburbs of Houston, where my prime childhood years, like age 7 to 14. Before then, we ended up moving back to Saginaw for high school praying. So it comes some moments in that childhood of my life that kind of just influenced me, not that I knew at the moment, but just later on reflecting like, okay, how it all culminates in God's plan for me. Was in those, when in Texas, in the summer, we would come up and stay, I would stay at my grandparents' house for a month in summertime. And so how many of you are grandparents here? Raise your hands. I'm gonna put mine down. That's good. Thank you. Grandparents, it's a lovely vocation to your grandchildren. Well, one thing that I remember was just my grandmother and my grandfather just praying the rosary together. Just in those days, we read the rosary every day. And just looking at some of the images, like the cross, some images of Mary, some saints, just really just helped like encourage me to not be shy of my faith. Just like this is what gives us life, you know. Jesus gives us life, and living that life of holiness is what sustains us through God's grace. But also part of that time of living with my grandparents was, fun fact about me, and I have my uncle that's a priest. And so he would come to my grandparents' house as well, his mother's house, and he would celebrate Mass. So pretty much what would happen is we'd be working outside in my grandma's like farm property all morning, and then my uncle would have Mass at 11:30, and then we'd have lunch. And me and my brother would be like the little altar servers or sacristans. How many of you are sacristans here, I think? There you go. Thank you. Altar servers, George? Yeah, thank you. Never happens, right? But it just was my uncle as a priest, it really just showed me like the goodness of the priesthood and what priesthood can be. But I didn't really dwell on it all too much as a kid. I was just like, it was just natural, like the priesthood as naturally, it's like natural, like, oh yeah, okay, it's something out there. And but like as I grew up and as a kid, I would always get comments from my family like, oh, you're just like your mom, you'll be a priest one day. And I didn't care for those comments. And that's why I grew up here. It was more, I just didn't give it any thought. I just kind of laughed it off, shrugged it off. For a lot of things, I call it, when people said seminary, I thought they were just mispronouncing cemetery. I'm like, I know it is seminary. And so it's like one of those things where you're shrugging it off. Just think about it. Like what I wanted to do, I wanted to go to college, I wanted to work, like that's kind of like what my plan for my life was. And so then I was going to high school within Saginaw, with the Heritage. I was at public schools all my life. And then I went to college at the University of Michigan. And so I ended up getting a master's in biomedical engineering from the University of Michigan. Graduated and I got my master's in 2014. And but there's a couple moments in college that I want to share with you. And one was junior year. It was my hardest semester of classes. I had a lot of classes and they were all difficult ones. And there was one class in particular that I think it was biology. I was like, oh, I like science, this will be a piece of cake for me. But I was struggling with it, and I was based on how the semester was going, like I was on the verge of like failing. And I remember praying, where, of course, like help me to pass this class. But the second part of that prayer was, if I don't pass this class, I'll enter seminary. Like I was going to the grave, right? I still, at that point in time, I had no idea what seminary was. I just knew that that was like the step towards priesthood. And even though I had no idea, I never prayed on priesthood at all before that. But that was just like what was coming out of prayer. And like I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do in my life if I go to this class. Like I won't be able to get a job or anything, I guess. And so like in that prayer, it's like God was second hand. I was putting God as a last resort option. And I prayed the same prayer again, applying for jobs. When I was applying for jobs, I was getting a lot of rejection letters at first, like, thank you for your consideration, but we were going to move in a different direction. And I was kind of worried. I was anxious about getting a job and starting my career. And I prayed the same prayer, like, I'll get a job or not, I'll enter seminary. And the Lord is good. The Lord knew that wasn't the time for me to enter seminary. It wasn't my time yet. And, you guys probably have figured it out, but like I passed the class. And I got a job. So the job I got was for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in Washington D.C. So a federal job, but I worked in the medical devices area, so orthopedic implants specifically. So like devices that pertain to me was like spinal rod and screw systems, hip replacements, knee replacements, every screws like screws replaced that go in your hands for broken bones. I kind of just reviewed that because when a company like Stryker Medical or J&J, Johnson & Johnson wants to sell a medical device, they design it, they do testing, and they submit that report to the FDA for review and approval before they can actually sell it to a hospital or surgeon to actually use it in a person. And so I was that guy reviewing the report, reviewing the application, telling the companies like, no, this isn't good. Think about it, some more, do some more testing, or like everything checks out, you're good to go. And it was a great job. Like I love my job. I had an awesome supervisor really taught me a lot about how to be a leader and how to like care about the person in front of you and not just about the work. I think of like and my supervisor wanted to talk to me about some work project, she would always start off and be like, how are you? Like, how's your day going? And that just meant a lot to me in terms of forming me, in terms of who I am as well. So yeah, great job, good supervisor, you know, was paid well, had a life. I was dating my girlfriend for like 2.5 years. Everything was like looking good for the life I wanted for myself. But God has other plans. I was working for about 4 years, and with all of this going on, I started thinking about like my future. You know, it wasn't just like living life, but actually starting to then plan ahead. You know, thinking about like can I see myself working here in 5 years and 10 years? Like, can I see myself like, am I going to be married? Will I have kids? You know, like, just really think about that. And just as I was, just something was missing. You know, like, nothing, everything just didn't seem right altogether. Like, there was something missing. And kind of some backstory is, like, I grew up in a Catholic family. Like, I went to Mass every Sunday. Like, I think I can count on my 2 hands how many Masses I missed on Sunday type of thing. And so, like, I went to Mass on holy days, you know, I went to confession every now and then. But that was it. That was it. I was not involved in the church, you know, in college. I didn't get involved with the Newman Center. I didn't get involved. I just went to church and went home. Like, I lived with Catholic friends, but they wouldn't join me for Mass. I would invite them every Sunday, and they would just say, no, I'm good. And then I would still go and catch up with them in an hour. And so, like, that aspect of my life, it's like, okay, yes, I kept up with the practices of the faith, but it wasn't enough. Like, it's never enough. I had no relationship with God. You know, I had no aspect of prayer life. I had, it was just more, church was just something else, something that was a part of me to do, and that was it. And so I started actually reflecting on that as like, what was missing? What was missing is my faith, you know, like my involvement in the church, my relationship with God. And that started a time of prayer. Really, it was what started was I just picked up the Bible and started reading. Any guesses where I started? Genesis. I started Genesis 1:1, you know, and I was dedicate time each day to read. And then I got to Leviticus. And I stopped. And then I picked it back up, you know. But kind of like that process, you know, that grasping salvation history. You know, we have to work in salvation history at work in my life. You know, it wasn't just reading the Bible at first. It was just reading the Bible at first, but then it was reading the Bible and spending time in prayer of like, what did I just read? And how does this mean? What is what I'm reading mean for me today? And then that branched off to waking up in the morning and praying before going into work. And then that branched into praying after work, going like on my way home, stopping at the church and praying. And then that part to just praying before going to bed. And so like it was just gradual, like this greater calling and desire to put God first in my life, because my whole life I put God second or last resort. as like the last option. And so like this process, I just felt like it was just a greater desire within me for God. And that kind of was like, before then, it was all about like work, my girlfriend at the time, and my friends. But then the shift happened where like, I still maintained that, but then God also was in that mix. And I liked it. And then I eventually was like, okay, then I had like, I don't have all the answers. I have all these questions, and I don't have the answers. And so what I did was I reached out to a priest. I reached out to a priest and was like, hey, can I just talk with you for an hour one day? And then what that led to was just like me with him like every 6 to 8 weeks, just having this like, because I just had a question, curiosity question, like, why does the church do this? Why do we believe this? And I just remember the first meeting I had, I kind of gave him my life story, kind of what I'm a little bit sharing with you. And I remember the first question he asked me was like, how are you still Catholic? Because many people in my position would have stopped going to church a long time ago. Just going to church by themselves, not being involved, not like having a support group, they would have long left the church. And so him asking me that question was just an opportunity to express thanksgiving and gratitude for my faith, for God's grace in terms of sustaining in my faith and persevering through all the per se struggles of just going to church by myself. And so yeah, I just encourage you to encourage your children, don't stop if they're just going by themselves. It's totally worth it. Even if you were at my state where you were just going to church and then going home, not really, that will have effect. That will bear fruit when they are ready to listen to God, to hear God. And so it's just encourage people, that just keep going, keep going to the sacraments. Because God's grace is there, God's grace is present. And kind of fast forwarding a couple months or a couple talks with this priest in terms of him answering some of the questions I had, I got to this point of wanting to get away from the world. I just need some quiet time. I want to go on a retreat, like a cabin in the woods, maybe in Harrison, something like that. And I was in Washington D.C. at the time. It's a pretty big city, and there are diocese everywhere. And the priest was like, how about the men's discernment retreat weekend at the seminary, which was in 2 weeks. So it was it's God's timing of putting that desire of me and mine to go on retreat 2 weeks from this discernment retreat weekend. God's funny, right? And nothing in my conversation with the priest ever really mentioned priesthood. It was just more me having the wanting to live out my faith better. And so when the priest said that, I was like, no, that's not for me, Father. I don't want to do this, And it's well, just think about it. And I thought about it, and kind of what came to mind was, if a priest tells you to do something, maybe you should do it. Hopefully that rings true for all of you. And so I ended up signing up. I ended up going to this retreat weekend at the Seminary in Washington D.C. and I hated it. I didn't want to be there because I hadn't really considered priesthood as a vocation for me. And so it felt very forced. I felt like this was being forced upon me. But I needed that, and God knew I needed that. But what led is kind of part of the journey. So I came out of that retreat hating it and saying, okay, well, clearly I hate it, so this isn't for me. And so I was like, okay, no to priesthood, I'm good. But what I ended up doing, it wasn't just saying no to priesthood or no to seminary, it was, I said no to prayer. I said no to God. And that I like cut out everything that I built up to. I cut out all my prayer, I cut out reading scripture, I was going to daily mass here and there, I cut that out. And I was just back to my life as before, going to Sunday mass. And I'll tell you, that was the most lonely feeling I have ever felt in my entire life. I was still working, still have friends, still with everything. And yet I was just lonely. I was devastated inside, because I cut God out of my life, If you know the parable of the Good Samaritan, or like the Eucharistic prayer, which are two very priestly things. And I knew why. I knew I was in tears, but I didn't do a darn thing about it. I just was like, no, I don't want to do this, God. And that went on for probably about 3 months, 3 to 4 months. And the time there, I said I had enough. Like, I'm tired of this yelling. And I prayed this very simple prayer. Was, Lord, if you want me to consider seminary, I will. Like, I want you in that life. It wasn't saying yes to priesthood. It wasn't saying yes to something. It was just saying yes to even considering it. And it was like that prayer that I actually, put God first. I put the Lord's plan first in my life. And when I did that, that's when I had peace. That's when everything felt right. That's when that missing piece of my life was present in its, maybe not entirety, but at least present. It will grow to its entirety from there, and still grow to entirety for Him to build the rest of my life. But it was like that. I found my fulfillment. It's like the Lord's will for me, the Lord's plan for me. And so since that moment, then I started everything back up again. Right? I picked up reading the Bible again. I forget where I left off. I think it was Proverbs or something. And I started praying again, started going to daily mass, and everything felt right, And then I went back on that men's discerning retreat weekend the following year, and I loved it. Because I actually went in with an open mind that, okay, this is what the Lord wants for me. And then after that retreat weekend, I'm still in D.C. I'm still in Washington D.C. And after that weekend, one of the first calls I made was to Father Andy LaFrance, who is our vocation director in Saginaw. And I pretty much laid out my entire 2 year, it was 2 years of that plan, discernment, prayer, everything I was going through, and he was like, you've discerned rightly. It's like you're ready. Normally it doesn't happen that way. Normally you want to build a relationship with the vocation director and kind of grow. I actually see, okay, is this really priesthood correct for this guy, or what's he thinking? But he knew I was doing that in D.C. speaking with a priest and really seeing it. And so yeah, he was happy to hear everything that I said. And then it was I had one more phone call with him afterwards, and he was like, okay, you're right. And so it was during COVID, and so I was it was actually fortunate that it was COVID because like everyone was working from home at that point in time, so I actually just went back and worked with my parents at my parents' house. And so I was in Saginaw, I was able to like fill out the application, meet with all the families in person for the actual application process. That's kind of how I discerned how to enter seminary. And you know, that peace that I stayed with me, so that prayer to yes, the Lord's will has stayed with me. And I've been joyful, like, you know how I mentioned like I was tearing up at Mass? The tears stopped after that. Those tears of sorrow just turned into like smiles of joy. And it's stayed with me. It's only grown and gotten stronger throughout my days in seminary. And kind of leading up to kind of where I'm at now, there's also another aspect of my discernment. Because yes, I said to seminary, but I did 2 years of pre-theology at Saginaw major seminary in Detroit. And so that's where I did like some of my get more like the philosophy background before actually starting studying theology. And it was summer 2022. You know, I had previously heard that I was just going to stay at Saginaw Major Seminary for theology, and so I moved into that new room at the seminary. And then I ran on to like there's a summer program in Omaha, Nebraska for just like really a spiritual relation with God type of formation program. And so I was in Nebraska that summer. I got it was like early July, I got like the letter from Saginaw Major Seminary that went to arrive back in the fall for summer seminary. And then I get a call from South Dakota in the middle of July, and I don't answer it. And then I get a text from St. Romer the next morning that said, "This is Bishop Cruz. Can you give me a call?" So I get a call from South Dakota, it was Bishop Cruz. And pretty much it was middle of July, you know, seminary starts middle of August. And Bishop asked me if I wanted to go to Rome for geology, to study theology, for the rest of my seminary. And he said I had 3 days to let him know. So some context is the seminary in Rome is called the Pontifical Parsonal College. It's for pretty much any seminarians throughout the United States. The last priest from our diocese that went there as a seminarian was Father Bob Byrne in 1972 or 4 or something like that. I think he graduated there in 1974 or 5. So about 50 years. It wasn't even, going to Rome wasn't even on my radar of like what God has in plan for me. And so when Bishop Cruz asked me that, I was in shock. I was truly in shock. And I remember hanging out, like, after hanging out with them, I was just like, just kind of like a lot of anxiety, just kind of like that initial like shock, like, what? And it's like I could have said yes or no, but just even like the option was still pretty like crazy for me to even consider, because I never considered it. You know, you hear all these like rumors and stereotypes about it too as well. And so I just, what I ended up doing, I ended up calling a couple of good friends and good priests that I knew, and just talk them through to calm me down. And then I went and prayed, and honestly, it was one of the easiest yeses I've said in my life, because I wasn't saying yes to go to Rome. I wasn't saying yes necessarily to Bishop Bruce. I wasn't saying yes to what I wanted. I was saying yes to what I believe the Lord was asking me to do. And so that's why it's like, knowing, believing that this is the Lord's will for me and saying yes, that just is the most peaceful and joyful, easiest decisions there is. And that's kind of just followed me since my own decision to say yes to enter seminary. And so yes, I ended up saying yes, and I had 1 month to get to Rome, because the seminary started in 1 month. And I wasn't just going to Rome as a tourist. I was staying there, and so I needed a visa. I needed to do a visa, which takes time. And I was in Nebraska. My passport was in Michigan. I had someone go to the center where my passport was. They didn't break open my room. They got the key somehow. And they shipped out my passport to where I was at. I was filling out this application, getting the visa, and if it's the Lord's will for me to go to Rome, it'll happen. It's just that just stuck with me. It's I just had to do my part of going through the process, and it all worked out. And I still I had to be given a temporary admission of acceptance letter. But when I showed up in Rome, I still I didn't know if I was supposed to be there. I was I don't have the true acceptance letter. Am I supposed to be here? And they're you don't have that yet? I was no. So this when I showed up, the next day. So I've been in Rome for 3 years now. It's been really a wonderful time. It's where I'm supposed to be in my formation. I've learned things about myself that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And it's one of those things where it's if you're open to what the Lord is asking for you, and you go at it with your whole heart and mind, it's gonna be what's right for you. And that's what it's been like for me in Rome. And like I said, I'll be ordained in Rome, actually, a deacon, transitional deacon, on October 2nd. So I head back to Rome next weekend, and then ordination will be a month and a half later. So thank you for your prayers. I'll be a deacon in Rome. I don't know if you'll actually see me as a deacon back in the diocese, because I'll probably just come back a week before be ordained a priest, and then I'll be ordination the priesthood next summer sometime. So, yeah. But no, happy to answer any questions you might have. What about my vocational discernment about Rome? Feel free to ask.
In Rome, were all your classes in English?
So in Rome, we stay at the Pontifical Northern Colony, which is the seminary, which is pretty much a dormitory. Everything there is in English. The staff, they're Italian, and we speak in Italian. But our classes are at universities in the city. So I actually, one thing someone asked me before going to Rome, what I was looking forward to the most, I said, walking to class. It's about a 35-minute walk just to get to class. And there's 3 different universities that we could go to. One is their classes are taught in English, and the other 2, their classes are taught in Italian. Since it was so last minute for me to go, I didn't have the time to really learn Italian, and so I chose to go to the English college, English university. So all my classes have been taught in English so far, but this upcoming year, I'm switching universities, and my classes will be taught in Italian. Yeah. Are any Italians here? Sounds good. It was pretty remarkable. I was there in the square. I'll tell this story. I'll tell the story about in the square. There's a couple from Rome, and it's an Italian Roman couple next to me. And when Pope Leo was announced, his name, like Robert Provost, and I knew that name because Pope Leo, then as a cardinal, was at our seminary for Thanksgiving just the past year. And so I was familiar with the name, so when I heard the name, I was like, I know who that is, like, he's American. So like, there's lots of cheering, but the Italian couple next to me, like, they're like, who is he? And this is an Italian, and so I was like, he's American, like, he's American. It's like, how do you know that? It's like, well, look at all American. and then they asked three questions. One was I don't know how many cardinals from America are on the council. I think it was great. There's only like 10 out of 130. So the second question was, how old is he? Considering like, oh, how long will he be adult? And he's only around, I think he's 69, so he's kind of like still young. And then the third question was like, okay, which way does he lean, like, left or right? And I was like, from what I've heard, I'm pretty sure he's Catholic. Like he's Catholic. like it's like that's what we're all as Catholics, as Christians. That's what we're told to be Catholic. It's not about the secrets. No, we're Catholic. And then like after that, they were just like, okay. and so yeah, it was just like this kind of sick to this like the shock. Oh my gosh, I'm American. Like there was a clear shock.
Watching it, it was like the crowd was gobsmacked.
Yeah. Like no one was expecting an American to be named Pope. Not even us. But then there's like the cheers. The cheers just erupted. But the biggest cheer wasn't at the naming of the Pope, like Pope Leo. It wasn't him Pope Leo stepping on the balcony. It was at the very beginning when when the announcement was like we have a Pope at Bagels. That was the biggest cheer, because to us it doesn't matter who it is at the end of the day. It just matters that we have our figure of Christ here on earth. We have our spiritual father as the head of the church, as the Holy Father, and so that's what was clear. It's like it doesn't matter who it is.
Thank you.
If you don't ask a question, I'll ask questions for you guys. Yeah.
I want to know how you told your girlfriend.
Great question. So context to that, we met in Washington D.C. And we dated for a year in the same city, Washington D.C. But then we were long distance after that. She went off to pursue medical school, and which was about 3.5 hour drive away in Norfolk, Virginia. And so we were long distance after that, and so it was kind of like this. We naturally just kind of drifted apart because that long distance plus my more greater calling and desire for God, we just kind of recognized that we were just going different paths, And so it was, for the most part, somewhat mutual, but still, it's like, after 2.5 years, it still hurts. So it's still painful, but it was one of those things where we both recognized that this was the right decision for both of us at the end of the day.
Dive onto a layer topic. Because the White Sox have been deemed the divine team of the MLB, has that changed your allegiances to any Michigan teams?
Absolutely. There is one thing. So Italian pizzas, like there's Roman style Italian pizzas. It's more like thin crust, a little soft. Like it's a very distinct kind of pizza. But now that we have an American Pope and they like Chicago style pizza, like, I want to teach one of the Roman pizzerias to make American style Chicago pizza, and then name it like the Pope's pizza. I think it would be great for business, but I think Italians are just too rooted in tradition. They're too stubborn in culture. Some of you are Italian, right? Some of you raise your hands and probably. Yes.
Do you have an Italian tutor help you learn the Italian language?
Correct. There are options to do Italian tutoring. It's not free. It still costs money, and it's extra money that the diocese would have to support. That's why I'm actually going back to Rome next week, is because I'm going to be doing like intensive one-on-one Italian tutoring lessons to just gain that confidence, because I'm going to be sitting in class for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just listening to Italian. Like right now, it's like my Italian is more conversational skill, so it's back and forth. It's basic learning, and so yeah. Hello, Marcel. Have you been to Rome? When was the last time? 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
About a year and a half.
Okay. Who else has been to Rome?
Well, we went.
Why?
I was born in Sicily.
Okay.
Yeah, and gosh, actually, last winter we spent.
That's why it's Italian.
They're trying to build a bridge from Sicily to the mainland. What do you think about that?
Tell them because at one time Sicily used to extend all the way into Rome. If you read your history, it's there. And anyways, last winter we decided we usually go to Florida, and we decided to go to Sicily instead for the winter. That was quite an experience.
What part?
Near Trapani. And that was very exciting. The only thing I missed out on was the golfing. There was no golf.
There's an open ocean. Everyone likes the green, right?
Outside of that,
You visited the
yes, I visited the ER. Anyways, that was excellent. I still have cousins there, family.
Okay. Awesome. Who else went to? You went through? Someone here went to you? Yeah.
I was in Sicily in '76. I was in the Navy station in Saginaw, that's near Catania.
Okay.
I learned a little broken Italian. About it, but you were talking about the Chicago pizza.
Oh.
Like the Sicilian pizza, it's the best in the world.
Your arancini is fantastic. It's cheap. Very good food.
You're going back to were you really close to Normandy?
Where? Am I close to Normandy?
Were you
like in France. I made a trip to Lisieux, France, which is in the Normandy region, and I wanted to visit Normandy Beach, but it was just too tight to be able to fit it in. But I want to go there.
You think you make, that same trip, if you want to do that, and go back? Find time?
Yeah.
I have a request, that's why.
Oh, sure.
If you go, I have an uncle buried here.
Okay.
If you would find the name Andrew Duchesne,
And-
say a prayer for him, I appreciate it.
Yeah, we will. How about I'll say a prayer right now? Andrew Duchesne.
Right.
Eternal rest, grant unto Andrew Duchesne, O Lord, and let perpetual on his shine. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed rest in peace. Amen.
Thank you. It's because I always wanted to make the trip there to visit. And he died just before I was born. And younger, I could have done that. Now I'm claustrophobic. There's no chance of getting on a plane and going.
Well, I'll write down his name after this.
Thank you.
You are?
We went about 10 years ago.
10 years
We
ago.
got to be in Rome for like 3 days. That was powerful. Every place we went to St. Mary Major, we went to the Vatican, and the steps, and we saw everything. I would go back in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Father, where is the North American College located? Is it right in the Vatican grounds?
It's not in the Vatican grounds, but I can be in St. Peter's Square in 7 minutes. We're actually on this hill, next to so my view from my bedroom window overlooks St. Peter's. I have pictures of it. Oh my God, sure. But yeah, no, if any of you come to Rome, definitely reach out to me. We have the best view of Rome because we see all of Rome, including St. Peter's. So yeah, it's wonderful.
I was in Rome when I was 13. My grandmother and my godfather took me and my cousin, and I have regrets because I was too young to enjoy it. But I remember going to St. Peter's, and back in the 60s, the styles were, shorter skirts, and they would not let us in until we lowered our skirts. So my grandmother's unzipping us and pulling our skirts down and covering our head with something so we could get into St. Peter's. But I remember the Pietà. That was my, absolute, that caught my attention. Yeah, regrets about being too young to actually.
Time to go.
Yeah.
Go there. There's
Pardon me? Oh, you're not never really went, huh?
yeah, and I might be there. I might be there. So yeah, outside of St. Peter's, for men or women who are immodestly dressed, so either like shoulders covering or not long skirts, they have fabric, just sheets of fabric that they give them, and they'll have to wear around, walk around the church.
What did your family have to say when you told them?
About what? Which one? I think my parents knew something was going on. Because I came home randomly one time, and they were like, but I didn't necessarily stay with them big time at the time, so they're like, what's going on? Because I came home to kind of get to know the diocese, speak with Paul, the friendly voice, and see the seminary, and so they knew something was going on, but my parents were very supportive, happy. So I have an older brother and an older sister, and they both got married when they were 21, 22. Like they got married within like 8 months of each other. And my mom said to me, you know, jokingly, but also probably serious to some extent, she said, "You can't get married till you're 27." Just because it was like just a lot that one year. And funny enough, it's like age 27 was kind of like when this like desire for God kind of started. I think I entered seminary, I think, when I was 29 or 20, yeah, 29. I don't know. But definitely, it's like the support of the parents, the support of grandparents, the support of the parish, just for young men, is like, that means so much. Because it's just like your mom alone. You're doing this, we're all part of the same community, we're all part of the same faith. And that just means a lot.
Is there any relationship between your background, your education, like engineering, that drove you to Christ? I mean, it seems there's a lot of engineers that we know that become priests.
Yeah, after being seminary for 5 years, there are a fair number of engineers. And I think a lot of it pertains to just, you know, this desire for learning, this curiosity, this desire to know and to know the truth. But also like the way of thinking as well. Like there's this kind of like common sense about engineers. You just have this common sense of just like, you know, God, who know it is, that's common sense in a lot of ways. It's just like, yeah, so it is kind of like this, it is kind of natural for engineers to kind of be led to God if they kind of they are open to that. And not shoehorning themselves along a certain path.
If somebody here had a grandchild, boy or girl, whatever, that they saw in them a possible vocation, priesthood, religious life, whatever, how could they help encourage that? If it's not their child, their grandchild, maybe they don't have, you know, daily contact with them. Of course, pray for them, yes, but what else can they do to help foster what God has in mind for that child? Because, you know, the world is very hostile. The world has no desire to encourage vocations. So what can somebody here who may have a child there do, other than to pray for them, which of course is important, but maybe in how they live, or what they say around their family child? Can you give some ideas about that?
I mean, I'm gonna go back to what I said about my time with my grandparents. Like, we had a point to pray the rosary together. And so if it's like we'll say like age 7 and above grandchild, don't be afraid though. Teach them how to pray the rosary. You know, even if it takes, even if it's only like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, it can their attention span. Don't be afraid to use that time and just teach them about the rosary, teach them about the sign of the cross, you know, just basic fundamentals of the faith. Like, I would say, don't be afraid to do that. And in some ways, it's our obligation to teach the next generation how to live out their faith, how to practice their faith. And so yeah, I was just encouraged that. Just kind of was like leading my example of not being shy, not being embarrassed, but really just living with Christ at the core of your life. And kids, they're intuitive. They'll see it. And they see you as a person, how good you are, and they'll want to imitate that. You know, because they love you. So you don't have to be the per se, like the gifter, you know, or the gift in your father, you know, that just like every time they see it, it's a gift. It's like, no, just be you. And give them the gift of faith.
You said you went to Lisieux, and I assume it was because of St. Therese. So you probably visited a lot of other saint locations. Which one was the most profound and powerful that you visited?
Great question. You might not like my answer. St. Peter's Basilica. When I first went to St. Peter's Basilica, I just felt the weight of the church. Like the weight of all the saints that are there and all the Pope saints. It was like, you could just feel their presence. And I was like walking in their footsteps that they were set for us. So you might not like that answer, but that's one of the most profound experiences I've